Hello students, the next topic of the discussion is peripheral smear staining. Okay, so we have done with peripheral smear preparation. Now we are going for staining, right? So what are the stains? They are basically called as Romanovsky stains. What is this? It has two components. It has a basic component and a acidic component. Basically it's a neutral dye. Okay, so most of them they combine, most of the stains they come in as a fixation as well as a staining procedure. Basically they are two in one. Okay, now what are the types of Romanovsky stains? These are examples. You have Jamesar stain, Leishman stain, Jenner stain, Wright stain, Meg Runwald stain, that is MGG. Then you have field stain. These are few examples of Romanovsky stains. Okay, so what is important for you is Leishman stain. This is the one which you are employing, and you will be doing the procedure using this stain. Okay, so you should know in and out about this stain. So basically it has different components. It has methylene blue and azure B or eosin Y component. Okay, so it will stain both the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So I'll tell you what stains what. The eosin component is an acidic dye. So acidic dye will stain the basic component. Just remember like that. So if it's an acidic one, it will stain the basic component. So which is the basic component in a cell? It is the cytoplasm. So it will stain the cytoplasm. Then methylene blue. Methylene blue is a basic dye. So obviously it will stain the acidic component. So which is the acidic component in a cell? It is the nucleus. You getting it? Okay, then you have another component which is present in Leishman stain, that is acetone-free methyl alcohol. So this acetone-free methyl alcohol acts as a solvent as well as a fixative. Okay, then you require buffered water with the pH. What is the pH? Is 6.8. This is very important, especially for Viva, because they invariably you will be asked what are the components of Leishman stain, what is the buffer, what is the pH of buffer. Okay, all these are Viva questions. They will definitely ask you. So keep all these things in mind. Now what is the procedure? So we have done with peripheral smearing, right? Preparation is done. You have air dried the slide. You have labeled the slide. Now the next procedure is to stain it. Only if you stain it you can see them, right? So what do you do? First you have to keep that smeared slide on the staining rack. Then you add Leishman Leishman stain. You're flooding the slide with Leishman stain. Okay, that means on an average you're adding 8 to 12 drops. Okay, then you wait for 2 minutes, right? Then after 2 minutes you're adding buffered distilled water. Okay, so this buffered distilled water you're adding double the amount of Leishman stain. So suppose you're adding 8 drops, you will be 8 drops of stain, you will be adding 16 drops of buffered distilled water. Okay, then you keep the stain for 2 minutes, you add buffered distilled water, and then you blow. Okay, blow. That means you're blowing the slide so that the stain, so that it spreads evenly, right? So that everywhere the stain gets taken up. Okay, then you keep it for how long? You keep it for around 8 to 10 minutes. So after that time you wash the slide, slowly wash the slide, open the tap and slowly wash the slide. Okay, then the next procedure is to dry the stain. So for drying the stain you have to keep it in a slanting position with the tail end up. Okay, so the tail end up and the head end will be down, right? So this is the procedure for staining. Now criteria, what is the criteria for a good stained smear? Earlier we dealt was criteria for a good smear. This is criteria for a good stained smear. Okay, generally it should be pink in color and the RBC should be coppery red. Okay, that is the color which we say. And eosinophils should take up the orange granules. Eosinophils, as you know, they have coarse granules, right? Orange coarse granules. Why there is orange? That orange should be taken up by the uh, granules within the eosinophils, and there should not be any stain deposits. The cells, that is the RBCs or the WBCs, they should not swell or they should not shrink. So this is the criteria for a good stained smear. These are all important things. They will invariably, you will be asked either the criteria for a good smear or the criteria for a good stained smear. How do you know that the stain is proper? All these things are viva questions. Okay. So this is an ideal smear. If you can appreciate, see the RBCs are just touching each other. Okay, and you can see a neutrophil there, four with the 4 lobes, and this is the monocyte. Just below that you can see the monocyte, and scattered, if you can appreciate, a few dots which you're seeing, these are our platelets. Okay, so this is an ideal smear. Next, we can see that this is a thin smear. If you can see, the RBCs are widely spaced. No, it should not be like this. It should be touching each other. Okay. Then this is a smear where you can see the RBCs are overlapped. So that means this is a thick smear. So this is also not ideal. Ideal thing is it should just be touching each other. The RBCs should just be touching. It should not be overlapping or it should not be widely placed. Right? Now, what are the flaws that can happen in a staining technique? There are many flaws which can come. Okay, but I'll tell you few of them which is important for you, and you should know how to correct them. These are all viva questions. Invariably you will be asked all these things. Okay, so what happens after staining? So you have done your procedure. There are few things which can happen. One is your stain is too blue. The same, your stain is too pink. Okay, or the stain is very faint. That means the stain has not caught up, or there can be stain deposits. So these are the few flaws. Now how will you correct each one? This is also important. If it is too blue, it is just indicating that you have overstained the slide. Okay, you have overstained the slide, or the staining has time is too long, or the smear is too thick, or because of inadequate washing. So what will you do? How will you correct this overstaining? You have to pour stain again and then keep it for 15 to 20 seconds, and then you wash it. So this is how you correct a overstained smear. So how will you correct too pink a smear? Okay, why are they too pink? Either because the buffer is too acidic, or because of excess of washing, or because of excess time that you have kept for staining. Clear? So how will you correct all these things? To correct this too pink stain, what will you do? You will add a concentrated stain. Okay, and then immediately flush the stain. Okay, that is the correction for a too pink a smear. Okay, then what will you do if it is understained? So if it, as the name implies, it is too faint, right? So definitely it requires more of staining. So you repeat the process again. Okay, keep it for 10 minutes and then you flush it with distilled water. Okay, so why there is understaining? Because of short staining time, or because of excess of washing off, or because there is some defect in the dye, or the dye is impure, or the dye is too old. All these things can cause understaining. Okay, then what will you do when you get stain deposits? Why? It is mainly because you have not maintained the correct position. That is, it should be in the staining rack, right? And it should be in a horizontal position, not vertically placed. Then you might have tilted the slide during the procedure, or again the dye can be impure, or it could be an unclean slide. So how will you correct all these things? So to correct the stain deposits, you have to pour concentrated solution and immediately clean the slide, or immediately flush the slide with distilled water. So these are the general flaws which will happen during staining and the correction procedures. You should know the correction procedures, because invariably you will have peripheral smear staining for practicals, and these are the viva questions which you can which they usually ask. Okay. Now next we go to an important section of smear reporting. How will you report? So now that you have stained the smear, right? Your next, why have you stained it? Mainly it's for reporting, right? So first what you should do is you should scan the smear in low power. Then you go for a higher power, which is your 40x, and then you go for oil immersion, which is 100x. Okay, so that is how you ideally report a smear. Okay, so when you go in for a low power scanning, you will know exactly which is the area you should concentrate. So for us, area of interest is the junction between the head and the tail and the body, right? So that is the area which we have to concentrate, right? And generally there is a format for reporting. So you know that a blood smear will have three components. You will have RBCs, you will have WBCs, and then you have platelets. So when you report, you should include all the three. Okay, and then at the end you give an impression. So how will you include all the three? First is your RBCs. So you always start off with the size. Is the RBC size normal? Is the shape normal? Is the hemoglobin content normal? So when there is a change in the size and the shape, it is called as anisopoikilocytosis. Okay. Then are you finding any premature cells, that is any immature cells like a reticulocyte count or like a nucleated RBC or any inclusion body within the RBC? That means sometimes you will find certain inclusions, like for example in megaloblastic anemia you will find Cabot ring, right? That is an inclusion. Basophilic stippling, those are all inclusions within the RBCs. Then next you will look for intracellular parasites. You are looking for malarial parasite or a filarial parasite. They are present within the RBCs. So you have to find out that also if you are finding it. Okay. Then the next one is rouleau formation. Rouleau formation is nothing but when the RBCs are stacked one over the other, like a stack of coins. Yeah, it gets piled up like that. So that is called as rouleau formation. Okay, and then you have to find out if there is any agglutination. So in your format, all these things should come when you are describing RBCs. Suppose there is no inclusion body, still there is no inclusion body, there is no intracellular parasite, no rouleau formation, no agglutination. All these things should come in your formatting. Okay, in your reporting. Right? The next we'll go to the WBCs. Okay, so WBCs ideally you're supposed to count in 10 fields. Okay, and then you're supposed to multiply it by 200. Okay, that will give you the average WBC count. Okay, so then the next thing is you have to go for the nuclear features. How are the nucleus? If you're describing a neutrophil, just tell if the neutrophil is good. I mean, if it is, if the lobes are normal, or if there are any granules, excess granules in the cytoplasm, all those things. And if you have to look, you have to see whether any immature cells are present. Okay, sometimes you will find even different maturation series. If you remember the maturation series, you will find immature cells somewhere. Okay, so if you're finding immature cells, you have to write immature cells. If there are no immature cells also, just write no immature cells found, no blast seen. So these things you should write in your reporting. Okay, then the next is the platelets. Platelets, first thing you have to tell, as the RBCs, WBCs, platelets also, the count is important and the distribution is important, whether they are seen singly or they are seen in clusters, and the size is important. Suppose sometimes you will find large platelets, you have to mention that also. Okay, so these are all, this is the this is the reporting format. When you are reporting, you will have reporting. So when you are reporting, you have to include all these things, that is RBCs, WBCs and platelets, and it should come in this similar format. You should not omit anything, you have to include everything what is being mentioned. Okay, and so the final diagnosis will be, if the RBCs, if they are small, ideally what is the size of an RBC? It is the same as that of the nucleus of a small lymphocyte. Okay, so that is how you compare the size of the RBC. So if it is a macrocyte, obviously the size of the RBC will be more. If it is small, if it is a microcyte, it will be, size will be smaller. So if there is a variation in the size and the shape, it is called as anisocytosis. Okay, or anisopoikilocytosis. Variation, if you find variation in both in the size and in the shape, you can mention anisopoikilocytosis. Right? Okay, so this is an RBC. If you can appreciate, they are of unequal size. So that indicates some of them are big. This one is big. The one which you're seeing on the right is big. The one which you're seeing with the bigger arrow, that is a bit smaller compared to the other one. So this is indicating anisopoikilocytosis. Okay. Then see here, if you can appreciate, this is the microcyte which you can see, and here you can see some pencil shaped cells, again another microcyte. And look at the chrome. Okay, ideally what is the pallor? It is 1/3 the size of an RBC is the ideal central pallor. So here if you can appreciate, there is so much of central pallor. Okay, so there is extension of the pallor, so that indicates that is hypochromia. Okay, and this is a WBC, that is a lymphocyte. Right? So all these things are important for you. So now suppose some indications from this, you will get a clue. Okay, these are microcytes. So what I should think, first thing that should come into my mind is a nutritional deficiency. It could be iron deficiency anemia, or are there any target cells? Am I seeing any fragmented RBCs? Is it a hemolytic anemia? So when you're thinking of all these things from a smear, you will get all these ideas. Okay, so if you're finding target cells, you can still think of thalassemia, right? If you're again finding multiple polys, multiple reticulocytes, you can think of sideroblastic anemia. So all this from a smear, you will get so many clues. Okay, so macrocytic, you can think of megaloblastic anemia or any case of liver disease. All these things you will get from a smear, right? Then the shape of the RBC, that is normal shape of the RBC is biconcave shape, right? So variation in shape, as I told you earlier, it is poikilocytosis, right? So spherical RBCs are usually seen in hereditary spherocytosis or in cases of hemolytic anemia. When you're suspecting hemolytic anemia, you have to look for spherocytes. Okay, so here if you can appreciate, this is a spherocyte. If you can appreciate, see, nice and round, and there is no central pallor. It lacks that central pallor here. All these are spherocytes. Okay, here another smear. If you can appreciate, here you can see an NRBC in the center, and just on top, if you can appreciate, that is a spherocyte, and exactly with the pigments inside, that is the reticulocyte. Okay, so sometimes what happens, RBCs, they will become elliptical in shape. Okay, elliptical, they are in cases of hereditary elliptocytosis, or in cases of microcytic anemia also you will get it. Okay, they are called as pencil shaped cells, right? So these are all elliptocytes, right, or ovalocytes, whatever you call this. Then in cases of sickle cell anemia, you will find sickle shaped RBCs. Here if you can appreciate, this is the sickle shaped RBC which you can appreciate here. Okay, here one here. Okay, all these are sickle cells. Then in cases of hemolytic anemia, you will get thalassemia, or in cases of iron deficiency anemia, you can get target cells, or in cases of HPC disease. These are the target cells which you can see here. See, it has both peripheral and central hemoglobinization. Okay, that's why the particular appearance of a target, right? Sometimes you will find stomatocytes. Instead of a target, it is elongated like that. That is usually seen in cases of acute alcoholism, or in case of phenothiazines, that is any form of drug administration. Okay, especially thiazines. So that is your stomatocytes. Then occasionally you will get teardrop cells, that is usually seen in myelofibrosis. Okay, so that is your teardrop cells. That is your teardrop cells, which you can appreciate. Can you see that like a bindi? Okay. Then you have acanthocytes. Acanthocytes are usually seen post splenectomy or in cases of liver disease, in cases of beta lipoproteinemia, all these things. Okay. Then Burr cells can also be seen in cases of uremia, when there is severe chronic kidney disease. In cases of CS stomach, you will find Burr cells. These are the Burr cells. They have crenated cells. Okay. Then you have schistocytes. Schistocytes are also called as fragmented cells, usually seen in microangiopathic hemolytic anemia or in cases of severe burns, okay, or when the patient is having prosthetic valves, right? So these are your schistocytes, which you can see the fragmented RBCs which you're seeing, okay, that is your schistocytes. Then pencil shaped cells usually seen in iron deficiency anemia, as I told you earlier. Okay, nucleated RBCs, you know, when you're suspecting any form of hemolytic anemia, physiologically they are seen in the peripheral blood in cases of neonates. Okay, in cases of post splenectomy also you will find nucleated RBCs. Okay, that is a nucleated RBC. Then this is normocytic normochromic. That means they are almost the size of the nucleus of a small lymphocyte, and they have 1/3 of the central pallor. So that is called as it is normocytic and normochromic. Right? This is a normal smear, but just that the RBCs are stacked to each. That means usually when the in the body area, when you see, you will get such a picture. Okay, and if you can appreciate, these are microcytic hypochromic RBCs with severe anisopoikilocytosis. You can find varied size and shape of the RBCs, right? These are macrocytes, where you're seeing the RBCs are big, large. Okay, this is a nucleated RBC, right? The same picture, nucleated. And if you can appreciate here, this is the Howell-Jolly body. These are pigments within the RBCs, or these are inclusion bodies within the RBCs. That is called as Howell-Jolly bodies. This is rouleau formation. What is rouleau formation? It is nothing but stacking of RBCs. I told you earlier, like a coin, it just sticks to each other. Okay, this is usually seen in multiple myeloma in cases of heavy paraproteinemias, all those conditions. Okay. Now, this is a intracellular parasite. If you can appreciate, this is the ring form of Plasmodium vivax. If you can appreciate this black arrow, the one here, all these are ring forms of Plasmodium vivax, that is malarial parasite. Okay. So, basically, this hypochromia is important in the sense it is mainly to diagnose iron deficiency anemia, okay, or any form of hemolysis. All those, that is also important. Okay. Now, what are the inclusion bodies you can get in an RBC? Okay, usually you will get Howell-Jolly bodies. Howell-Jolly bodies are nothing but they are DNA fragments. Okay, usually seen in megaloblastic anemia, or in cases of hemolytic anemia also you will get. And then you can have Pappenheimer bodies. What are these? These are nothing but iron plus proteins. Okay, they are usually seen in sideroblastic anemia, or in case of megaloblastic anemia, in case of hemolytic anemia, in cases of post splenectomy. Right. And then another inclusion which is seen as basophilic stippling. So basophilic stippling is random blue spots which I showed you in the RBC. Yeah, that is, it can either happen in thalassemia or in case of megaloblastic anemia, in cases of lead poisoning. All these cases you will get RBC's inclusions. Okay. So what is Heinz bodies? If you remember, G6PD deficiency, you will find towards the RBC membrane, close to the RBC membrane, you will find the granules, the inclusions. Okay. Then HPH inclusions are usually seen in alpha thalassemia. These are some inclusion bodies seen in the RBC. Basophilic stippling, as I told you earlier, okay, seen in megaloblastic anemia. Then you have Howell-Jolly bodies. Then in case of WBCs, I told you all these things, right? So what is a normal WBC count? It's ranging from 4,000 to 11,000. So anything beyond 11,000 is called as leukocytosis. Less than 4,000 is called as leukopenia. You know all these things, right? So in the cytoplasm, you're ideally supposed to see the granules. In cases of severe infection, you will find toxic granules, or when the patient is having septicemia. Okay, and then you can even get bilobe neutrophils, that is called as Felgehort anomaly. If you remember the WBC disorders introduction, all these things are covered for you, right? So this is a bilobe neutrophil, Felgehort anomaly. Okay, then this is a normal smear with WBCs. Okay. So in some cases you will find even hypersegmented neutrophils. What is a normal neutrophil lobes? It is around 2 to 5 lobes, right? So beyond that can also happen, that is called as hypersegmented neutrophil, usually seen in megaloblastic anemia. So this is a hypersegmented neutrophil which you can appreciate here, that is usually seen in megaloblastic anemia. Then platelets. What is the normal platelet distribution? It is 1.5 to 3.5 lakhs. Okay, so when the platelet count is increased, it is called as thrombocytopenia. I'm very sorry. Thrombocytosis, right? And thrombocytopenia. When the platelet count is reduced, it is penia. When it is more, it is cytosis, right? So what are the causes for thrombocytosis? It is usually infections, any form of infections, or in case of malignancy. One malignancy, it is chronic myeloid leukemia, or in cases of polycythemia. What is polycythemia? It is nothing when the hemoglobin count is more, that is beyond 18 for males. Okay, thrombocytopenia is nothing but reduced platelet count, so it should be less than 1.5 lakhs. And what are the causes? It is usually seen in ITP or in cases of acute leukemia, right? So to do all these things, you have to ideally choose a nice area, okay, and then you go in and then you examine the ideal area. The ideal area is basically the junction between the body and the tail. Okay, so this is also important for you. This we have covered, right? So when you do a DC, this is how you do a DC. Okay, you do our 10 into 10 table and then you mark. Okay, so reporting, as I told you earlier, you should follow that reporting format. Okay, this is the reporting format. It should include, all these things should include, right? And then at the end, you go in for the impression. Okay, what is impression? Normocytic, normochromic blood picture, or if the peripheral smear is within normal limits, you give it as peripheral smear within normal limits, right? That's it. Now, one more small topic. How will you prepare a thick smear? I think I've told you this, right? But I forgot to mention one more thing. In staining, the only difference for staining is, in a thick smear, you have to first dehemoglobinize. To dehemoglobinize, you have to put it in distilled water. Okay, you put the slide with a thick smear in the center, you air dry it, and then you put it in distilled water for 10 minutes. So once the 10 minutes is over, then you continue the routine procedure, that is, you continue with your Leishman stain. Okay, 2 minutes of stain, and then you add buffered water, okay, buffered distilled water for another 8 to 10 minutes, and then you continue the same procedure, right? So basically a thick smear is used for identification of parasites, right? So this is the Plasmodium vivax. If you can appreciate, this is Plasmodium vivax. These are all rings which you are seeing, okay, the parasite rings. Okay, this is a female gametocyte. Okay, it is basophilic, and you can see the brown and orange granules which you're seeing. Okay, this is again Plasmodium vivax. It is a schizon which you're seeing. There are different forms for vivax, right? Okay, this is again Plasmodium vivax with the multiple rings. Another picture. This is trypanosomiasis as another parasite which you can differentiate, which you can appreciate in the peripheral smear. Okay, this is microfilaria. This is the microfilarial worm, okay, which you can appreciate. Right. So that finishes peripheral smear staining, smearing, staining, and reporting. So all these three things are important for you. Invariably, you will be asked for viva. You can be asked for a short notes as a short note. Okay, even for your exams. Right. Thank you.